What would you do if someone burned down your childhood home for insurance money, then stood there smiling as investigators ruled it an accident? Would you let them get away with it, or would you fight back with everything you had left? That's exactly what happened to 17-year-old Lucia Morales on a rain-soaked Tuesday in November. But what her stepfather didn't know was that those charred walls held secrets worth more than any insurance payout. Secrets that would bring him to his knees. Before we dive into this story of justice served cold, let us know in the comments where you're watching from today. Lucia kneels on the wet pavement, her school uniform soaked through, watching orange flames devour the only home she's ever known. The Victorian house on Maple Street has been in her family for 3 generations. Her grandmother's piano, her mother's art studio, the attic where she practiced her pottery wheel for hours, dreaming of art school, all of it turning to ash. Detective Walsh circles the scene with his clipboard, nodding as Lucia's stepfather Derek explains how the old wiring must have sparked, how these century-old houses are fire traps waiting to happen, how thankful he is that nobody was hurt. Lucia watches Derek's performance through tears that have nothing to do with smoke. She knows what really happened. She was supposed to be at Pottery Club until 6. Derek thought the house would be empty. He didn't count on her coming home early with a migraine, that she'd smelled gasoline the moment she walked through the front door. By the time she grabbed her backpack and grandmother's wooden jewelry box from her nightstand, the flames were already climbing the kitchen walls. She barely made it out before the windows started exploding. Now Derek stands beside her, his hand heavy on her shoulder, playing the concerned stepfather, the grieving widower who's lost his wife's family home. His clothes smell like accelerant, but Detective Walsh doesn't seem to notice. Your mother would want us to rebuild, Derek murmurs, squeezing too tight. Start fresh somewhere new? Lucia doesn't answer. She can't speak past the rage building in her throat. Her mother died of cancer 8 months ago. Derek married her when Lucia was 12, charming and attentive until the life insurance came through. Now he's cashing in on everything else. The jewelry box weighs heavy in her lap. Carved mahogany with intricate roses along the edges, passed down from her great-grandmother who fled Mexico with nothing but hope and steady hands. Inside, her mother's wedding ring catches the firelight, the one from her first marriage. The one Derek always hated. Detective Walsh shakes Derek's hand, promises the insurance investigator will be thorough but expects no complications. These old houses, he repeats. Tragedy waiting to happen, as the fire trucks pack up, neighbors drift back to their own lives. But across the street, old Mrs. Patterson remains at her window. She's been watching that house for 40 years. She sees everything. Derek drives them to a motel on the highway, explaining how insurance will cover temporary housing while they look for something modern, something without so much history weighing it down. Lucia sits on the scratchy bedspread, still clutching the jewelry box, while Derek makes phone calls to adjusters and contractors. His voice carries that same smooth confidence he used to charm her mother. But Lucia remembers the man who screamed at her for leaving pottery clay on the kitchen counter, who pawned her mother's jewelry when he thought she wouldn't notice, who looked relieved at the funeral instead of heartbroken. She opens the jewelry box and touches her mother's ring. Beneath it, wrapped in tissue paper, lies something Derek never knew existed. Something her mother gave her the week before she died. A key, small and brass, worn smooth by generations of fingers. Her mother had pressed it into her palm during one of their last conversations, her voice weak but urgent. If anything happens to me, baby, if Derek tries to take everything, use this. Your great-grandmother was smarter than anyone gave her credit for. Lucia never understood what the key opened. The house had been searched and renovated countless times over the decades. But now, watching Derek's satisfied smile as he describes their insurance windfall to some stranger on the phone, she realizes her mother knew this day would come. Derek ends his call and turns to her with practiced sympathy. I know this is hard, sweetheart, but sometimes destruction makes room for something better. Lucia nods and slips the key into her pocket. She's thinking about pottery class, about how fire doesn't just destroy. In the right hands, fire transforms clay into something stronger, something permanent. Derek thinks he's won. He thinks the evidence burned with the house. He's wrong. Tomorrow, while he meets with insurance investigators, Lucia will return to the ruins. She'll find what her great-grandmother hid. And Derek will discover that some secrets survive even the hottest flames. The jewelry box clicks shut. Outside, rain begins to fall on the ashes of everything Derek thought he'd destroyed. But some things are built to last. The insurance investigator arrives Wednesday morning with skeptical eyes and a clipboard full of forms. Janet Morrison has seen every kind of fire in 20 years on the job. She knows the difference between accident and arson. Derek meets her at the gate with coffee and his most helpful smile. Points out the old electrical panel, the outdated wiring, the space heater in the basement that probably overloaded the system. His story flows smooth as rehearsed lines. Lucia watches from the motel window across the street. She should be in school, but Derek insisted she stay close during the investigation. For emotional support, he said, "Really, he wants to monitor every word she speaks." At Riverside High, rumors spread faster than flames. By lunch, everyone knows about the Morales house fire. Most offer sympathy. Others whisper behind her back that wasn't her stepdad having money. Problems? Didn't he just buy that expensive truck last month? Convenient timing, right after her mom died. The whispers follow Lucia through hallways like smoke. Her pottery teacher, Ms. Rodriguez, pulls her aside after sixth period. "Take all the time you need," she says gently. "Your wheel will be waiting when you're ready." But Lucia can't concentrate on clay when her life is crumbling. That evening, she walks past the burned shell of her house. Crime scene tape flutters in the wind. The structure stands like a skeleton, blackened beams reaching toward gray sky. She touches the key in her pocket. Her great-grandmother Isabella had lived through the Depression, 2 wars, and enough hardship to break most people. She wouldn't have hidden something unless it mattered. But where? Derek finds her standing at the gate when he returns from another insurance meeting. His mask slips for just a moment when he sees her there. "Shouldn't go poking around," he says, steering her away. "Dangerous. Could collapse any minute." That night at the motel, Derek spreads insurance papers across the small table. $500,000 in coverage. Enough to disappear if he wants. Start over somewhere new with a grieving teenage stepdaughter who'll inherit everything when she turns 18, that if she makes it that long. Lucia pretends to sleep while Derek makes quiet phone calls. She catches fragments through the thin bathroom door. Kid doesn't suspect anything. Should be wrapped up by Friday. Maybe take a vacation after this stress. Thursday brings more questions. Detective Walsh returns with follow-up paperwork. Janet Morrison measures burn patterns and takes photographs. A neighbor mentions seeing Derek's truck leave unusually early Tuesday morning, then return right before the fire started. That Derek's smile stays perfect, but sweat beads at his temples. Just running errands. He explains, had to get Lucia's prescription filled before the pharmacy closed. Except Lucia doesn't take any medications. And Mrs. Patterson, still watching from her window, remembers seeing Derek load something heavy into his truck bed. Something that looked like gas cans. But Mrs. Patterson is 87 with thick glasses. Her testimony won't hold up in court. That afternoon, Lucia skips pottery club and returns to the ruins alone. She climbs through what used to be the back door, careful to avoid loose beams and scattered debris. The kitchen where Derek started his fire is completely gutted. The living room where her grandmother's piano stood is now just charred floorboards and melted strings. But the basement survived better than expected. Lucia descends carefully, using her phone's flashlight to navigate the smoky darkness. Her great-grandmother's workshop takes up the far corner. Isabella had been a seamstress, supporting the family when her husband died young. Her old Singer sewing machine sits twisted and blackened, but the concrete walls around it remain intact. Lucia runs her hands along the foundation stones, looking for anything unusual. A loose brick, a hidden panel, some sign of where the key might fit. Nothing that she's about to give up when she notices something odd about the floor. One section of concrete looks newer than the rest, smoother, like it was poured years after the foundation was laid. Her phone battery dies, plunging her into darkness. Footsteps crunch through debris upstairs. Lucia freezes. Derek wasn't supposed to return for hours. She hears his voice, closer now, talking to someone else. Found her backpack by the basement stairs, he's saying. Told her to stay away from here. A second voice responds. Detective Walsh. Kids process grief differently. Probably just wants to feel close to her family memories. Lucia presses against the basement wall, heart hammering. If they find her down here, Derek will know she's suspicious. He'll watch her every move until the insurance pays out. Then she'll disappear too. Another unfortunate accident. The footsteps move toward the front of the house. Lucia waits until their voices fade, then creeps up the basement stairs. She slips out through a gap in the back wall where the fire burned through. Mrs. Patterson's curtains twitch as Lucia crosses the street. For a moment, their eyes meet through the glass. The old woman nods slightly, as if she understands something unspoken. That evening, Derek lectures Lucia about safety while they eat takeout Chinese food, about not interfering with official investigations, about letting the adults handle everything. But Lucia isn't listening. She's thinking about that newer section of basement floor, about what her great-grandmother might have hidden beneath it, about the key that grows warm in her pocket whenever she holds it tight. Derek thinks he controls the narrative, thinks his charm and careful planning will carry him through. Tomorrow, Lucia will prove him wrong. The jewelry box sits on the nightstand, roses carved deep into mahogany that survived wars and heartbreak, and now this. Some things endure no matter how hot the flames burn. Isabella Morales knew that. Her great-granddaughter is about to learn it too. Friday morning brings the insurance adjuster's preliminary report. Janet Morrison sits across from Derek at the motel's breakfast table, her expression unreadable behind wire-rimmed glasses. Electrical fire, most likely. Old wiring, overloaded circuits. These Victorian houses weren't built for modern appliances. Derek's relief floods the cramped room like cologne. He nods gravely, playing the part of a man grateful for closure. How long before the claim processes? He asks. 2 weeks, maybe 3. We'll need final statements from you and Lucia. Then the check should arrive promptly. Lucia pushes scrambled eggs around her plate, watching Derek's performance. He's already planning his exit strategy. She can see it in the way his fingers drum against the table, the way he checks his phone every few minutes to school. The whispers follow her down hallways like ghosts. Her locker has been decorated with sympathy cards from classmates, but she catches the sideways glances. The speculation.in pottery class. She finally touches clay again. Her hands shake as she centers the wheel, muscle memory fighting against grief and rage. Ms. Rodriguez watches from across the studio, concern creasing her weathered face. The clay collapses. Lucia tries again. Collapses. Again. Take your time, Ms. Rodriguez says quietly. Art can't be rushed. But time is exactly what Lucia doesn't have. Derek grows more confident each day, more careless. This morning, she overheard him booking a flight to Costa Rica. One way. Departure date. Next Thursday. After school, she returns to Mrs. Patterson's house. The old woman answers the door in a faded house dress, her eyes sharp despite their cloudy appearance. I saw you come out of the basement yesterday, Mrs. Patterson says without preamble. Your stepfather wasn't happy when he found your backpack. Lucia glances around nervously. Can I come in? Mrs. Patterson's living room overlooks the burned house perfectly. The window is her command post, complete with binoculars and a notebook, where she records everything she sees. Your great-grandmother was my friend, Mrs. Patterson says, settling into her chair. Isabella was a smart woman. Didn't trust banks. Didn't trust men who smiled too much. Did she ever mention hiding anything? Mrs. Patterson's laugh sounds like paper rustling. Child, your great-grandmother survived the Depression. Of course she hid things. Question is, did she tell you where to look? Lucia pulls out the brass key. Mrs. Patterson's eyes widened. Haven't seen that in 60 years. Isabella showed it to me once, said it opened her insurance policy. Not the paper kind. The real kind. What does that mean? It means Isabella was smarter than people gave her credit for, including your stepfather. Mrs. Patterson hands Lucia the binoculars. Detective Walsh is walking around the house again, taking pictures from different angles. His movements look less routine now. More suspicious. He's not buying Derek's story completely, Mrs. Patterson observes. Good investigators trust their instincts. But will instincts be enough? Derek's performance is flawless. Grieving husband. Concerned stepfather. Unlucky victim of old wiring and bad timing. That evening, Derek announces they're moving to a temporary apartment across town, just until insurance settles. Closer to his work, closer to the airport, Lucia realizes. She helps him pack their few salvaged belongings, including the jewelry box. Derek eyes it suspiciously. Your mother had expensive taste in trinkets. It belonged to my great-grandmother. It's not worth anything. That Derek's smile doesn't reach his eyes. Everything's worth something to the right buyer. Saturday night, while Derek sleeps off 2 mini celebration beers, Lucia slips out of the apartment. She takes the city bus to Maple Street, then walks the final 6 blocks through neighborhoods that remember when her family first arrived from Mexico. The burned house squats like a wounded animal against the streetlights. Police tape flutters. In November wind, Lucia climbs through the same gap in the back wall, her phone flashlight cutting through basement darkness. This time, she comes prepared. A hammer from Derek's toolkit. A crowbar. A determination that burns hotter than any fire Derek could set. The newer section of concrete floor measures roughly 4 feet square. Lucia attacks the edges with the crowbar, chipping away decades of Derek's confidence. The concrete is thinner than she expected. Poured hastily, maybe during renovations years ago. After 20 minutes of steady work, the slab cracks. Lucia pries up a corner and peers into the space beneath. Metal. Something. Wrapped in oilcloth. The smell of old grease and preservation. She pulls out a metal box, larger than a shoebox but smaller than a suitcase. The brass key fits perfectly in its lock. Inside, protected from time and moisture, Isabella's real insurance policy waits. In the darkness, documents, property deeds, bank statements from accounts Derek never knew existed, and photographs. Dozens of photographs showing the house's hidden modifications over the decades. Secret compartments built into walls. False floors. Hiding places designed to protect valuables from thieves and tax collectors and husbands who might drink away the family fortune. But it's the handwritten letter on top that stops Lucia's breath. To my granddaughter Maria's daughter, Isabella had written in careful Spanish. If you are reading this, then the house has faced another threat. These walls have protected our family for generations. Now it is your turn to protect what matters. The photographs show locations throughout the house where Isabella had hidden cash, jewelry, and documents. But one image makes Lucia's hands tremble. The basement workshop wall, with dimensions and instructions for accessing a space behind the foundation stones. A space large enough to hide something valuable. Something Derek would kill for. Footsteps crunch through debris upstairs. Lucia's blood turns to ice. She shoves everything back into the box, locks it, and slides it behind Isabella's old sewing machine. The key goes back in her pocket as heavy. Footsteps descend the basement stairs. A flashlight beam cuts through the darkness. Lucia? Derek's voice carries more annoyance than concern. What the hell are you doing down here? I couldn't sleep. I just wanted to see Grandma's sewing room 1 more time. Derek's light finds her crouched beside the broken concrete. His expression shifts from annoyance to suspicion. You broke that? I tripped. I'm sorry. Derek studies the hole she's created, then Lucia's dirty clothes and guilty expression. Something calculating moves behind his eyes. Time to go home, he says. Quietly. And Lucia? Don't come back here alone. It's not safe. The threat hangs in basement air thick with smoke and secrets. Derek knows she's looking for something. Now he'll be watching every move she makes. But Lucia has Isabella's map now. And tomorrow, while Derek meets with his insurance agent, she'll discover what her great-grandmother protected with her life. Some fires are meant to destroy. Others forge strength from ashes. Derek is about to learn the difference. Sunday morning arrives gray and cold, matching the despair that settles over Lucia like ash. Derek watches her every move now. He follows her to the bathroom, insists on driving her to school, checks her backpack for hidden items. At breakfast, he slides insurance papers across the table with practiced casualness. Need your signature here. Just confirming you witnessed the electrical problems we'd been having. Lucia stares at the lies typed in official language. Faulty wiring. Overloaded circuits. A tragedy no one could have prevented. What if I don't sign? Derek's coffee cup pauses halfway to his lips. His smile never wavers, but something cold flickers behind his eyes. Then we can't rebuild. Can't move forward. Your mother wouldn't want us stuck in the past, would she? The threat is subtle but clear. Sign the papers or lose everything. Lucia picks up the pen with trembling fingers and writes her name beneath Derek's fabricated story at AT school. The whispers have evolved into open speculation. In calculus, Ashley Morrison, the insurance investigator's daughter, slides into the seat beside her. My mom says your stepdad's story doesn't quite add up. Something about the burn patterns. Hope flickers in Lucia's chest. What kind of patterns? Ashley glances around nervously. She's not supposed to discuss ongoing cases, but the fire started in multiple locations. That's usually a sign of accelerant, multiple locations. Just like Lucia suspected, Derek had been thorough, ensuring the house would burn completely, but thoroughness creates evidence. And Janet Morrison has 20 years of experience reading the stories fires tell. In pottery class, Lucia finally manages to center her clay. Her hands remember the rhythm her mother taught her. Steady pressure, patient guidance. The vessel rises. Slowly, walls thin but strong. That you're finding your center again, Ms. Rodriguez observes, watching from across the studio. I'm trying. Ms. Rodriguez moves closer, lowering her voice. My grandmother always said that clay remembers everything. Every hand that touches it. Every fire that shapes it. The memories stay hidden until someone knows how to look. The words hit Lucia like revelation. Clay remembers. Houses remember. Families. Remembered that Isabella's photographs had shown hiding places throughout the house, but one location stood out. The basement workshop wall where her great-grandmother had built something permanent. Something that would survive even Derek's flames. After school, Lucia walks past the ruins again. Mrs. Patterson's curtains twitch in greeting. The old woman has become her unofficial guardian angel, watching for signs of trouble. Derek's truck isn't in the driveway. He's meeting with lawyers about the insurance claim, preparing for his Thursday escape. This might be Lucia's last chance. She climbs through the gap in the back wall, moving quickly toward the basement. Isabella's hidden box waits behind the sewing machine where she left it. The photographs inside show exact measurements for the secret compartment. According to Isabella's notes, the hiding place sits 3 feet up from the basement floor, behind a section of foundation stones that can be removed by hand. No tools required. Just knowledge passed down through generations of women who understood that security comes from what you control, not what controls you. Lucia finds the spot easily. The stones are slightly different in color, mortared with newer material. She presses against each one until she finds the loose section. It slides away to reveal a cavity the size of a small safe. Inside, wrapped in more oilcloth, waits Isabella's true legacy. Not just cash and jewelry, though there's plenty of both. Documents, proving the house is worth far more than Derek claimed. Original land grants, historical preservation papers, evidence that the Victorian contains architectural details protected by the state, and something else. Something that makes Lucia's hands shake. A second set of insurance papers. Policies Derek doesn't know about. Coverage Isabella maintained through a different company for decades, with Lucia's mother listed as primary beneficiary and Lucia as secondary. The payout is substantial. More than enough to rebuild. More than enough to ensure Derek never controls her future. But the most damning evidence sits at the bottom of the cash. Bank statements showing Derek's debts. Gambling losses. Credit cards maxed out for months before her mother's death. A man drowning in obligations who saw fire as his only escape. Footsteps echo through the house above. Lucia's blood freezes. Derek wasn't supposed to return for hours. She shoves everything back into the hiding place, slides the stones into position, and grabs Isabella's box from behind the sewing machine. The basement stairs creak under heavy boots. Derek's voice carries through the darkness, talking to someone on his phone. Yeah, she's been asking questions. Kids getting suspicious. Pause. Lucia presses herself against the foundation wall, hardly breathing. No, I can handle it. Just need to keep her quiet until Thursday. Then we disappear, and this whole thing becomes someone else's problem. Another pause. Longer this time. Trust me. I've handled tougher situations than one teenage girl. The words hit Lucia like physical blows. Handled tougher situations. How many other people had Derek eliminated when they became inconvenient? His footsteps move closer to the workshop area. Lucia clutches Isabella's box and slides deeper into the shadows. If he finds her here, with evidence of the secret compartment, the basement door slams shut above. Derek's truck engine roars too. Life in the driveway. He's leaving again, satisfied that his secrets remain buried. Lucia waits 10 minutes before emerging from the basement. Her hands shake as she climbs through the gap in the back wall. Isabella's box feels heavier now, weighted with responsibility and dangerous knowledge. Mrs. Patterson's porch light flickers on as Lucia crosses the street. The old woman opens her door before she can knock. Found what you were looking for. More than I expected. Mrs. Patterson studies her with knowing eyes. Your great-grandmother was a careful woman. She understood that sometimes the only way to protect your family is to plan for the worst. Lucia nods, thinking about Derek's phone conversation, about Thursday's flight to Costa Rica, about tougher situations he's handled before. What do I do now? Mrs. Patterson's smile is sharp as winter wind. You do what Isabella would do. You fight smart. And you remember that some battles are won before the enemy knows they've started. That night, Lucia lies awake in the temporary apartment, listening to Derek's satisfied snores through thin walls. Isabella's box sits hidden in her school backpack, its contents burning through her thoughts like fire through old wood. Thursday is 4 days away. 4 days to gather evidence. 4 days to find allies. 4 days to honor her great-grandmother's legacy and ensure Derek pays for every life he's destroyed. The brass key grows warm in her palm as she makes plans. Some fires consume everything in their path. Others forge something stronger from the ashes. Derek lit the wrong kind of fire. Now Lucia will show him what happens when you underestimate the women in her family. The pottery wheel in her mind spins steady and sure, shaping justice from the clay of his crimes. Pause and tell us where you're watching from before the finale unfolds. Monday morning, Ms. Rodriguez finds Lucia in the pottery studio before first period. The teenager sits at her wheel, but her hands rest motionless on cold clay. You're early today, the teacher observes, settling into the chair beside her. Couldn't sleep. Too much thinking. Ms. Rodriguez has taught for 25 years. She recognizes the weight students carry when home becomes dangerous. Want to talk about what's weighing on you? Lucia considers her options. Derek's departure is 3 days away. The insurance check will arrive any day. Once he disappears to Costa Rica, the truth disappears with him. What if someone you trusted turned out to be dangerous? What if you had proof, but nobody would believe you? Ms. Rodriguez watches Lucia's hands tremble against the clay. Are we talking hypothetically? No. We're talking about my stepfather burning down my house for insurance money. The words hang in the studio air like smoke. Ms. Rodriguez doesn't flinch, doesn't dismiss the accusation as teenage drama. She leans forward, voice dropping to careful quiet. What kind of proof? Lucia pulls out her phone and shows the photos she took of Isabella's documents. Bank statements revealing Derek's debts. Insurance papers he doesn't know about. Evidence of the secret compartment built to protect family treasures. Ms. Rodriguez studies each image with growing concern. This is serious evidence, Lucia. Have you taken it to the police? Detective Walsh thinks Derek's story is true. Everyone does. He's very convincing. Most predators are. They practice their performances until they're perfect. Ms. Rodriguez stands and moves to her desk, pulling out a business card from her wallet. My sister works for the district attorney's office. Prosecutes insurance fraud. She knows how to spot the patterns. Lucia takes the card with trembling fingers. Carmen Rodriguez, Assistant District Attorney. Financial Crimes Division. Will she believe me? She'll believe the evidence. And Lucia? You don't have to face this alone anymore. During lunch, Lucia calls the number from the school's empty ceramics lab. Carmen Rodriguez has her sister's warm voice, but with an edge of steel underneath. Tell me everything, she says after Lucia explains the situation. Start from the beginning and don't leave anything out. Lucia talks for 20 minutes. The fire. Derek's performance for investigators. The gasoline smell. The secret bank accounts and gambling debts. Carmen listens without interruption, occasionally asking for clarification. How soon can you get me copies of those documents? Carmen asks when Lucia finishes, today after school. But Derek's leaving Thursday. He's booked a flight to Costa Rica. Carmen's silence stretches long enough to make Lucia nervous. Then, we need to move fast. Meet me at the DA's office at 4 o'clock. Bring everything you found. And Lucia? Stay away from Derek until then. If he suspects you know something. The call ends with unspoken threat hanging between them. Lucia spends the rest of the day watching clocks, counting hours until rescue arrives. At 3:30, she takes the bus downtown to the government complex. Carmen Rodriguez looks like an older version of Ms. Rodriguez, but dressed in prosecutor armor, sharp suit, confident stride, eyes that miss nothing. She examines Isabella's documents with expert attention, occasionally making notes in precise handwriting. When she reaches the photos of Derek's bank statements, her expression hardens. Classic pattern, she murmurs. Mounting debts, then a convenient fire. We see this more often than you'd think. Can you stop him? Carmen looks up from the evidence. We can try, but insurance fraud is complicated to prove. We'll need more than circumstantial evidence. What about his phone call? I heard him say he'd handled tougher situations than one teenage girl. Hearsay. Won't hold up in court without recording. Carmen studies Lucia thoughtfully. But there might be another way. If Derek thinks he's gotten away with it, he might get careless. Reveal something we can use. What do you mean? Carmen pulls out a small recording device, no bigger than a matchbook. This is legal as long as one party consents to the recording. In this case, that would be you. You want me to get him to confess? I want you to give him enough rope to hang himself. Men like Derek love to brag about their cleverness, especially when they think they've won. Lucia stares at the recording device. Such a small thing to carry such enormous responsibility. What if he realizes what I'm doing? Carmen's expression grows serious. That's the risk, and I can't ask you to take it. But Derek's leaving Thursday. If we don't get evidence before then, he disappears forever, along with any chance of justice for your mother. The words hit Lucia like clay hitting the wheel. Justice for her mother. For Isabella. For every family Derek might destroy in the future. She takes the recording device, Carmen. Spends an hour coaching her on technique. Natural conversation. Leading questions. Ways to prompt admissions without seeming obvious. Remember, she says as they part, Derek thinks he's smarter than everyone else. Use that arrogance against him. Tuesday evening, Lucia sits across from Derek. At their temporary apartment's kitchen table, the recording device hidden in her pocket. Derek sorts through insurance paperwork, humming under his breath. His good mood is almost obscene. The adjuster called today, he announces. Check should arrive Wednesday morning. We'll be all set for our fresh start. Where will we go? Derek's eyes gleam with anticipation. Somewhere warm. Somewhere we can put this tragedy behind us. The recording device burns against Lucia's leg. She thinks about Carmen's coaching. Use his arrogance. Let him brag. You really thought of everything, didn't you? Making sure we'd have enough money to start over. Derek's smile widens. Your mother always said I was good at planning ahead, even the electrical problems. You noticed them before anyone else did. Derek pauses, studying her face. That's right. Good thing I was paying attention to those warning signs. That it's such a skillful performance that Lucia almost believes it herself. Derek has convinced himself that his version is true, that he's the hero of this story. But heroes don't book one-way tickets to countries without extradition treaties. Heroes don't research how long gasoline accelerant remains detectable in fire debris. Heroes don't practice their grief in mirrors before talking to insurance investigators. The recording device captures every word as Derek relaxes into familiar lies. By the time they say goodnight, Lucia has enough evidence to bury him. She lies awake listening to Derek's satisfied snores, thinking about Isabella's hiding places and Carmen's coaching and the brass key that grows warm whenever justice comes close. Tomorrow, Derek gets his insurance check. Tomorrow, he thinks his plan reaches perfect completion. Tomorrow, he learns that some fires burn backwards through time, consuming everything a predator thought he'd hidden. The pottery wheel in Lucia's mind spins faster now, shaping something beautiful from the ashes of Derek's crimes. Wednesday morning arrives with autumn rain and the sound of Derek's phone buzzing with good news. The insurance check has cleared. $500,000 deposited into his account at 9:15 a.m. Lucia watches him celebrate from across their tiny kitchen, spooning cereal with hands that shake from excitement rather than nerves. The recording device sits heavy in her backpack, loaded with his admissions from the night before. That we should do something special tonight, Derek announces. Celebrate new beginnings. Like what? There's a community meeting at the high school. Town council discussing fire safety. In older neighborhoods. Thought we might attend. Show people we're committed to preventing what happened to us. Lucia's blood chills. Derek wants to make a public appearance. Cement his victim narrative in front of the whole town. Play the grieving stepfather one final time before disappearing forever. Dio, we have to go? Derek's smile doesn't reach his eyes. It would look strange if we didn't. People expect to see us there. After Derek leaves for his final meeting with the insurance adjuster, Lucia calls Carmen Rodriguez from the school's empty art room. He's planning something public tonight, she reports. A town meeting about fire safety. He wants to make an appearance. Carmen's sharp intake of breath carries through the phone. That's either very stupid or very confident. Maybe both. Are you still planning to get on that recording? Already done. Last night at dinner, he admitted to noticing the electrical problems before anyone else. Made it sound like he was being careful, but the timeline doesn't match what he told investigators. Carmen pauses. That's good, but we need more. Something definitive. Something that proves intent. What if I can't get him to say more? Then we work with what we have and hope it's enough. But Lucia? If he's making public appearances tonight, he feels completely safe. Men like Derek only take those risks when they're certain they've won. The high school auditorium fills with concerned neighbors as evening rain pounds against tall windows. Derek works the crowd like a politician, shaking hands and accepting sympathy with practiced grace. Lucia sits in the front row, watching his performance while the recording device captures everything through her pocket. Mrs. Patterson hobbles in halfway through the opening remarks, taking a seat directly behind them. Fire Chief Morrison presents statistics about house fires in older neighborhoods. Detective Walsh discusses investigation procedures. Janet Morrison, the insurance investigator, explains how her office works to prevent fraudulent claims. Derek listens with rapt attention, nodding at appropriate moments. But Lucia notices his fingers drumming against his knee. The same nervous tell he showed when her mother was dying. When the medical bills mounted and insurance companies delayed payments. When he realized that fire might solve all his problems at once. The town council opens the floor for community input. Derek stands smoothly, turning to face the crowd with Wounded Dignity. My stepdaughter and I want to thank everyone for their support during this difficult time. Losing our family home has been devastating, but your kindness reminds us that community is what really matters. Polite applause ripples through the auditorium. Derek basks in the attention, his confidence growing with each sympathetic nod. We've learned important lessons about electrical safety in older homes. Warning signs that homeowners should never ignore. I just wish I'd acted sooner on the problems I'd been noticing. Lucia's recording device captures every calculated word. Derek is digging his own grave with practiced shovel strokes. Mrs. Patterson stands slowly, her voice carrying clearly through the auditorium despite her age. I have a question for Mr. Gutierrez. You mentioned noticing electrical problems. Can you be more specific about what you observed? Derek's smile falters slightly. Just the usual signs. Flickering lights. Overloaded circuits. That old house wasn't built for modern electrical demands. When did you first notice these issues? Mrs. Patterson presses. A few weeks before the fire. Maybe a month. Mrs. Patterson nods thoughtfully. That's interesting, because I live directly across the street, and I never saw any electricians at your house. No repair trucks. No work being done. If you'd been concerned about electrical problems for weeks, wouldn't you have called a professional? The auditorium grows quiet. Derek's performance suddenly feels less polished, more desperate. We were getting estimates. Planning to address the issues after the holidays. But you didn't mention any of this to the insurance investigator initially, Mrs. Patterson continues relentlessly. According to the police report, you first claimed the fire was completely unexpected. A tragic accident with no warning signs. Derek's face flushes red above his collar. I was in shock. Traumatized. Sometimes details don't come back immediately. After something so terrible. Mrs. Patterson's eyes glitter behind thick glasses. Of course, trauma affects memory. Like how it might affect your recollection of where you were Tuesday morning before the fire started. What are you implying? Derek's voice rises, losing its practiced calm. I'm not implying anything. I'm stating facts. I saw your truck leave at 7:30 Tuesday morning with something heavy in the bed. I saw you return at 1:15, 30 minutes before young Lucia came home sick. And I smelled gasoline on the wind 20 minutes before the first flames appeared. The auditorium erupts in whispers. Derek looks around wildly, his victim mask finally slipping to reveal the predator underneath. That's impossible. You're an old woman with failing eyesight. Your testimony is worthless. The words hang in shocked silence. Derek realizes his mistake immediately, but it's too late. He's just attacked a respected community elder in front of 100 witnesses. Lucia stands slowly, her heart hammering, but her voice steady. Mrs. Patterson isn't the only one who knows the truth. She pulls out the recording device and Carmen Rodriguez's business card, holding them high enough for everyone to see why stepfather has been lying about everything. The electrical problems, the timeline, his financial situation. Last night, he admitted to noticing warning signs that didn't exist. Tonight, he's contradicted his official statement to investigators. Derek lunges toward her, rage replacing calculation. You little bitch. You don't know what you're talking about. But Fire Chief Morrison and Detective Walsh are already moving, blocking Derek's path to Lucia. The crowd surges to its feet, voices rising in confusion and outrage. Carmen Rodriguez enters through the auditorium's back doors, flanked by two state police officers. She must have been waiting outside, ready to move the moment Lucia gave the signal. Derek Gutierrez, you're under arrest for insurance fraud and arson in the first degree. The words cut through chaos like fire through old wood. Derek's world collapses in handcuffs and Miranda writes while the town he tried to fool watches his performance crumble into ashes. Mrs. Patterson reaches forward and squeezes Lucia's shoulder. Your great-grandmother would be proud, she whispers. Some fires reveal truth instead of hiding it. As Derek is led away in custody. Lucia touches the brass key in her pocket. Isabella's legacy has survived another threat. The family's true insurance policy has paid out at last. Justice burns hotter than any flame Derek could light. The state police station buzzes with activity as Carmen Rodriguez builds her case against Derek. Evidence spreads across conference room tables like pieces of a puzzle finally clicking into place. Lucia sits beside Carmen, watching investigators examine Isabella's documents through protective sleeves. The brass key rests in an evidence bag, its worn surface catching fluorescent light. Your great-grandmother was remarkably thorough, Carmen observes, studying the hidden insurance policies. She documented everything. Property values, improvement, records, even photographs of structural modifications Derek claimed didn't exist. What happens now? Now we let Derek hang himself with his own lies. In the interrogation room down the hall, Derek maintains his innocence with practiced conviction. His lawyer, hastily summoned from the phone book, looks increasingly uncomfortable as the evidence mounts. Detective Walsh slides photographs across the metal table. Bank statements showing Derek's gambling debts. Credit card bills for gasoline. Purchases the morning of the fire. Cell phone records placing him at a hardware store buying accelerant at 7:45 a.m. These are circumstantial, Derek's lawyer protests weakly. My client has explanations for all of this. Derek leans forward, his charm offensive in full display. I admit I had financial difficulties. My wife's cancer treatment was expensive, but that doesn't make me an arsonist. Carmen enters the interrogation room carrying Lucia's recording device and a transcript of the previous night's conversation. She places them on the table with deliberate precision. Let's hear what you told your stepdaughter about those electrical problems you noticed. The recording plays Derek's voice through tinny speakers. His admissions about planning ahead. His satisfaction with how well everything worked out. His certainty that they'd get away clean. Derek's face drains of color as his own words convict him. That was taken out of context, he stammers. She was asking hypothetical questions. I was just what? Carmen's voice cuts like steel. Just confessing to insurance fraud? Just admitting you planned this fire in advance. Derek's lawyer whispers urgently in his ear, but Derek shakes him off. His arrogance has become his weakness, just as Carmen predicted. You think you're so smart, Derek snarls at Carmen. But that recording proves nothing. I never said I started the fire. Carmen smiles coldly. You're right. You were very careful not to explicitly confess. But combined with the physical evidence, the timeline discrepancies, and Mrs. Patterson's testimony, we have enough for a conviction. She slides another document across the table. A search warrant for Derek's motel room and truck. That we found the gasoline containers in your truck bed, Derek. Still reeking of accelerant. Still carrying your fingerprints. Our forensics team is comparing soil samples from your truck to debris from the fire scene. Derek stares at the warrant, his performance finally cracking completely. The confident stepfather disappears, revealing the desperate criminal underneath. His lawyer closes his briefcase with a sharp snap. My client won't be answering any more questions without a formal plea agreement. Carmen gathers her evidence with satisfaction. Derek's capture is complete. The predator who destroyed families for profit will spend the next decade in prison. But for Lucia, justice means more than Derek's conviction. It means honoring Isabella's legacy. Protecting the truth Isabella died preserving. That evening, while Derek sits in county lockup awaiting arraignment, Lucia returns to the burned house one final time. Mrs. Patterson accompanies her, along with Ms. Rodriguez and a small crew of volunteers from the high school art department. They're here to salvage what Derek couldn't destroy. Isabella's workshop tools, family photographs that survived in the hidden compartment, pottery pieces Lucia made with her mother's guidance. Most importantly, they're here to document the house's hidden architecture, the secret spaces Isabella built to protect her family's treasures. The modifications that prove the house is worth far more than Derek claimed that they work by lamplight. Neighbors begin arriving with donations. Lumber for rebuilding, tools for reconstruction, casseroles and coffee for workers who believe in second chances. Mrs. Patterson directs operations from a folding chair, her notebook recording every donation and volunteer hour. She's appointed herself project manager for the resurrection of the Morales family home. Your great-grandmother built this house to last through anything, she tells Lucia as they sort through salvaged materials. Fire, poverty, men who think they can steal what doesn't belong to them. The bones are good. Everything else can be rebuilt. Ms. Rodriguez approaches with a clay vessel she found intact beneath debris in the basement. One of Lucia's early pieces, somehow protected from heat and smoke. Clay remembers, she says softly, handing Lucia the pot. Even when everything else burns, the important things survive. Lucia holds the vessel carefully, feeling its familiar weight. Her mother's hands had guided these same fingers around this same clay. Isabella's will had shaped this same form decades earlier. Some things endure no matter how hot the flames burn. The next morning brings news of Derek's arraignment. He pleads not guilty to all charges, but bail is set at $2 million. Money he no longer has access to since the insurance company froze his accounts pending investigation. Carmen calls Lucia with updates throughout the day. Additional charges filed. Evidence mounting. A case so solid that Derek's public defender is already discussing plea bargains that he's finished, Carmen concludes. Even if he somehow beats the arson charges, which he won't, the insurance fraud conviction will put him away for years. What about the money? The insurance payout? Already frozen and marked for recovery. Plus, Isabella's hidden policies will pay out to you as secondary beneficiary. You'll have enough to rebuild exactly as your great-grandmother intended. That afternoon, Lucia stands in her pottery class, centering clay on the wheel while her classmates work quietly around her. Her hands move with new confidence, shaping something beautiful from formless material. Ms. Rodriguez watches approvingly from across the studio. You found your center again that I'm learning from my great-grandmother. She knew how to make things that last. The clay rises under Lucia's careful pressure, walls thin but strong. Like the house that will rise from Derek's ashes. Like the family legacy that survived fire and betrayal and men who underestimate the women they try to destroy. Derek thought he could burn away the truth. Instead, he forged it into something unbreakable, justice shaped by fire. Family bonds stronger than steel. Some lessons can only be learned in the hottest flames. 6 months later, the Morales house stands transformed. New roof gleaming in spring. Sunlight. Fresh paint brightening walls that remember generations of family stories. Gardens blooming where Isabella once grew herbs and hope in equal measure. But it's the bronze plaque beside the front door that draws the most attention. Isabella Morales Historical Preservation Site. Protected by the State Historical Commission. This Victorian home represents the ingenuity and resilience of immigrant families who built communities through determination and craftsmanship. Lucia runs her fingers over the raised letters, remembering the day the Historical Society confirmed what Isabella's documents had proven. The house contains architectural innovations from the 1920s. Hidden spaces designed by a brilliant woman who understood that survival required preparation. The state protection means Derek's insurance money funded its own defeat. Every dollar he stole now serves to preserve what he tried to destroy. The words hang in shocked silence. Derek realizes his mistake immediately, but it's too late. He's just attacked a respected community elder in front of 100 witnesses. Lucia stands slowly, her heart hammering, but her voice steady. Mrs. Patterson isn't the only one who knows the truth. She pulls out the recording device and Carmen Rodriguez's business card, holding them high enough for everyone to see why stepfather has been lying about everything. The electrical problems, the timeline, his financial situation. Last night, he admitted to noticing warning signs that didn't exist. Tonight, he's contradicted his official statement to investigators. Derek lunges toward her, rage replacing calculation. You little bitch. You don't know what you're talking about. But Fire Chief Morrison and Detective Walsh are already moving, blocking Derek's path to Lucia. The crowd surges to its feet, voices rising in confusion and outrage. Carmen Rodriguez enters through the auditorium's back doors, flanked by 2 state police officers. She must have been waiting outside, ready to move the moment Lucia gave the signal. Derek Gutierrez, you're under arrest for insurance fraud and arson in the first degree. The words cut through chaos like fire through old wood. Derek's world collapses in handcuffs and Miranda rights while the town he tried to fool watches his performance crumble into ashes. Mrs. Patterson reaches forward and squeezes Lucia's shoulder. Your great-grandmother would be proud, she whispers. Some fires reveal truth instead of hiding it. As Derek is led away in custody. Lucia touches the brass key in her pocket. Isabella's legacy has survived another threat. The family's true insurance policy has paid out at last. Justice burns hotter than any flame Derek could light. The state police station buzzes with activity as Carmen Rodriguez builds her case against Derek. Evidence spreads across conference room tables like pieces of a puzzle finally clicking into place. Lucia sits beside Carmen, watching investigators examine Isabella's documents through protective sleeves. The brass key rests in an evidence bag, its worn surface catching fluorescent light. Your great-grandmother was remarkably thorough, Carmen observes, studying the hidden insurance policies. She documented everything. Property values, improvement, records, even photographs of structural modifications Derek claimed didn't exist. What happens now? Now we let Derek hang himself with his own lies. In the interrogation room down the hall, Derek maintains his innocence with practiced conviction. His lawyer, hastily summoned from the phone book, looks increasingly uncomfortable as the evidence mounts. Detective Walsh slides photographs across the metal table. Bank statements showing Derek's gambling debts. Credit card bills for gasoline. Purchases the morning of the fire. Cell phone records placing him at a hardware store buying accelerant at 7:45 a.m. These are circumstantial, Derek's lawyer protests weakly. My client has explanations for all of this. Derek leans forward, his charm offensive in full display. I admit I had financial difficulties. My wife's cancer treatment was expensive, but that doesn't make me an arsonist. Carmen enters the interrogation room carrying Lucia's recording device and a transcript of the previous night's conversation. She places them on the table with deliberate precision. Let's hear what you told your stepdaughter about those electrical problems you noticed. The recording plays Derek's voice through tinny speakers. His admissions about planning ahead. His satisfaction with how well everything worked out. His certainty that they'd get away clean. Derek's face drains of color as his own words convict him. That was taken out of context, he stammers. She was asking hypothetical questions. I was just what? Carmen's voice cuts like steel. Just confessing to insurance fraud? Just admitting you planned this fire in advance. Derek's lawyer whispers urgently in his ear, but Derek shakes him off. His arrogance has become his weakness, just as Carmen predicted. You think you're so smart, Derek snarls at Carmen. But that recording proves nothing. I never said I started the fire. Carmen smiles coldly. You're right. You were very careful not to explicitly confess. But combined with the physical evidence, the timeline discrepancies, and Mrs. Patterson's testimony, we have enough for a conviction. She slides another document across the table. A search warrant for Derek's motel room and truck. We found the gasoline containers in your truck bed, Derek. Still reeking of accelerant. Still carrying your fingerprints. Our forensics team is comparing soil samples from your truck to debris from the fire scene. Derek stares at the warrant, his performance finally cracking completely. The confident stepfather disappears, revealing the desperate criminal underneath. His lawyer closes his briefcase with a sharp snap. My client won't be answering any more questions without a formal plea agreement. Carmen gathers her evidence with satisfaction. Derek's capture is complete. The predator who destroyed families for profit will spend the next decade in prison. But for Lucia, justice means more than Derek's conviction. It means honoring Isabella's legacy. Protecting the truth Isabella died preserving. That evening, while Derek sits in county lockup awaiting arraignment, Lucia returns to the burned house one final time. Mrs. Patterson accompanies her, along with Ms. Rodriguez and a small crew of volunteers from the high school art department. They're here to salvage what Derek couldn't destroy. Isabella's workshop tools, family photographs that survived in the hidden compartment, pottery pieces Lucia made with her mother's guidance. Most importantly, they're here to document the house's hidden architecture, the secret spaces Isabella built to protect her family's treasures. The modifications that prove the house is worth far more than Derek claimed. As they work by lamplight, neighbors begin arriving with donations. Lumber for rebuilding, tools for reconstruction, casseroles and coffee for workers who believe in second chances. Mrs. Patterson directs operations from a folding chair, her notebook recording every donation and volunteer hour. She's appointed herself project manager for the resurrection of the Morales family home. Your great-grandmother built this house to last through anything, she tells Lucia as they sort through salvaged materials. Fire, poverty, men who think they can steal what doesn't belong to them. The bones are good. Everything else can be rebuilt. Ms. Rodriguez approaches with a clay vessel she found intact beneath debris in the basement. One of Lucia's early pieces, somehow protected from heat and smoke. Clay remembers, she says softly, handing Lucia the pot. Even when everything else burns, the important things survive. Lucia holds the vessel carefully, feeling its familiar weight. Her mother's hands had guided these same fingers around this same clay. Isabella's will had shaped this same form decades earlier. Some things endure no matter how hot the flames burn. The next morning brings news of Derek's arraignment. He pleads not guilty to all charges, but bail is set at $2 million. Money he no longer has access to since the insurance company froze his accounts pending investigation. Carmen calls Lucia with updates throughout the day. Additional charges filed. Evidence mounting. A case so solid that Derek's public defender is already discussing plea bargains. He's finished, Carmen concludes. Even if he somehow beats the arson charges, which he won't, the insurance fraud conviction will put him away for years. What about the money? The insurance payout? Already frozen and marked for recovery. Plus, Isabella's hidden policies will pay out to you as secondary beneficiary. You'll have enough to rebuild exactly as your great-grandmother intended. That afternoon, Lucia stands in her pottery class, centering clay on the wheel while her classmates work quietly around her. Her hands move with new confidence, shaping something beautiful from formless material. Ms. Rodriguez watches approvingly from across the studio. You found your center again. That I'm learning from my great-grandmother. She knew how to make things that last. The clay rises under Lucia's careful pressure, walls thin but strong. Like the house that will rise from Derek's ashes. Like the family legacy that survived fire and betrayal and men who underestimate the women they try to destroy. Derek thought he could burn away the truth. Instead, he forged it into something unbreakable, justice shaped by fire. Family bonds stronger than steel. Some lessons can only be learned in the hottest flames. 6 months later, the Morales house stands transformed. New roof gleaming in spring. Sunlight. Fresh paint brightening walls that remember generations of family stories. Gardens blooming where Isabella once grew herbs and hope in equal measure. But it's the bronze plaque beside the front door that draws the most attention. Isabella Morales Historical Preservation Site. Protected by the State Historical Commission. This Victorian home represents the ingenuity and resilience of immigrant families who built communities through determination and craftsmanship. Lucia runs her fingers over the raised letters, remembering the day the Historical Society confirmed what Isabella's documents had proven. The house contains architectural innovations from the 1920s. Hidden spaces designed by a brilliant woman who understood that survival required preparation. The state protection means Derek's insurance money funded its own defeat. Every dollar he stole now serves to preserve what he tried to destroy. Inside, the workshop has been restored to Isabella's original specifications. Her sewing machine, carefully repaired by community volunteers, sits ready for Lucia's upcoming fashion design courses. The pottery wheel occupies the same corner where Isabella taught her granddaughter, who taught her daughter, who taught Lucia. Some traditions survive, everything misses. Patterson arrives for her daily inspection, moving more slowly now, but with eyes as sharp as ever. She's appointed herself unofficial historian of the Reconstruction, documenting every detail in her endless notebooks. The grand reopening is tomorrow, she announces, settling into her favorite chair by the window. Half the town plans to attend, including some very important visitors. What kind of visitors? Mrs. Patterson's smile carries secrets. You'll see. That evening, Lucia sits in her restored bedroom, working on homework while rain patters against windows Derek once planned to leave. Broken forever. The brass key rests on her desk, no longer hidden but displayed proudly beside Isabella's jewelry box. Her phone buzzes with a text from Carmen Rodriguez. Derek's sentencing hearing moved to next week. Maximum penalty likely. Thought you should. No. Derek will spend the next 12 years in state prison. Arson in the first degree. Insurance fraud. Conspiracy. His appeals have been denied systematically, each court recognizing the overwhelming evidence of his guilt. But prison feels like insufficient justice compared to what he destroyed. Trust. Security. A mother's dying wish that her daughter be protected. Some crimes can't be measured in years behind bars. Saturday morning arrives bright and clear, perfect weather for new beginnings. Cars line Maple Street as community members gather to celebrate the house's resurrection. Mayor Patricia Wong cuts a ceremonial ribbon across the front porch, while photographers capture the moment for the town newspaper. Local TV crews interview neighbors about the importance of preserving historical architecture. But the real surprise waits inside. The State Historical Commission has installed a permanent exhibit in Isabella's former sewing room. Glass cases display her tools, documents, and photographs showing the house's evolution across generations. A video screen plays interviews with elderly neighbors who remember Isabella's kindness during the Depression. At the center of the exhibit sits Lucia's pottery, vessels she created during her mother's illness, pieces that survived Derek's fire. New work shaped from clay that remembers everything. Contemporary artisan Lucia Morales continues her family's tradition of craftsmanship and community service, reads the exhibition placard. Her work demonstrates how creativity transcends tragedy, transforming pain into beauty through patient dedication. Ms. Rodriguez appears beside her, studying the display with professional appreciation. Your pottery has evolved remarkably this year. That I had good teachers. My mom, Isabella, you, and yourself. Don't forget the most important teacher. The crowd gathers in the main living room as Mayor Wong prepares to make announcements. Mrs. Patterson claims her spot in the front row, notebook ready to record everything. This house represents more than historical preservation, the mayor begins. It demonstrates how communities protect their own when institutions fail, how neighbors become family when family is threatened. She gestures toward a covered easel near the fireplace. But today we're announcing something special. A permanent reminder of what this place represents. The cloth falls away to reveal a large oil painting. Isabella Morales working at her sewing machine, surrounded by the gardens that fed her community during hard times. Behind her, translucent figures represent the generations that followed. Lucia's mother, Lucia herself. Future daughters not yet born. The artist is Maya Chun, a graduate student from the State University, Mayor Wong explains. She spent months researching Isabella's life, interviewing neighbors, studying family photographs. This painting will hang permanently in the town hall. Lucia stares at the portrait, seeing her great-grandmother's face for the first time in living color. Isabella's expression carries determination tempered by kindness, strength earned through surviving what should have broken her. The brass keys twin gleams from Isabella's painted fingers, but the biggest surprise comes last. Carmen Rodriguez steps forward carrying an official-looking folder. The district attorney's office has established the Isabella Morales Victim Advocacy Fund, she announces. Funded by asset recovery from Derek's conviction and ongoing donations from community supporters. The fund will help families targeted by insurance fraud, domestic violence, and financial predators. Lucia Morales will serve as its first youth coordinator, working with our office to identify and assist vulnerable families before tragedies occur. The room erupts in applause. Lucia feels overwhelmed by the responsibility and honored by the trust. Isabella's legacy expanding beyond pottery and hidden compartments to protect families she'll never meet. After the crowd disperses, Lucia sits alone in Isabella's restored workshop. The sewing machine hums with recent use. Fabric scraps scattered across the work table where Mrs. Patterson has been teaching neighborhood children to sew. The pottery will spin smoothly under her hands as she sinters clay for a new vessel. Something functional but beautiful. Something that will last. Outside, Mrs. Patterson tends Isabella's herb garden, now recognized by the Botanical Society as containing rare varieties thought extinct. Seeds Isabella preserved through decades of change, waiting for the right conditions to bloom again. Some fires destroy everything they touch. Others clear away what's unnecessary, making room for stronger growth that Derek's flames had been meant to erase Isabella's legacy. Instead, they illuminated it, revealed it, made it impossible to ignore or forget. The house stands stronger than before. The family story burns brighter than any destructive fire, justice shaped from clay and courage, truth preserved and hidden. Spaces and brave hearts, Isabella's insurance policy has finally paid its greatest dividend. Not money, but meaning. Not survival, but legacy. The wheel spins. The clay rises. The work continues. Some things are built to last forever. What would you do if someone burned down your childhood home for insurance money, then stood there smiling as investigators ruled it an accident? A year ago, Lucia Morales faced exactly that choice. Fight back with everything she had left, or let Derek Gutierrez disappear with his crimes unpunished and her family's legacy reduced to ash. Today, she knows the answer runs deeper than simple justice. The morning sun streams through windows Derek never expected to see rebuilt, casting light across pottery that remembers every hand that shaped it. Lucia sits at Isabella's restored wheel, teaching her first student from the Victim Advocacy Program. At 8-year-old Maria Santos watches with wide eyes as clay rises under patient guidance. Her family's apartment burned 3 months ago under suspicious circumstances. The insurance company claims electrical problems. Her stepfather's debts tell a different story, but this time, Carmen Rodriguez's office moved quickly. This time, a community knew how to recognize the warning signs. This time, a predator was stopped before he could complete his plan. Your hands need to be steady but not tight, Lucia explains, guiding Maria's small fingers around the clay. Too much pressure collapses everything. Too little lets it fall apart, like the balance between remembering and moving forward. Like the difference between preserving history and being trapped by it. Mrs. Patterson enters the workshop carrying her daily offering of sweet tea and community gossip. At 88, she's become the unofficial grandmother to every child who passes through Isabella's doors. Another family asking about pottery lessons, she reports with satisfaction. Words spreading about what we're doing here. The Victim Advocacy Program has expanded beyond anyone's expectations. 3 families housed in the renovated guest rooms while insurance companies process legitimate claims. 24 children learning traditional crafts that connect them to something larger than their current struggles, at a waiting list of volunteers wanting to help with reconstruction projects across the county. Derek's attempt to destroy one family has somehow created an extended family of hundreds. The brass key now hangs on a chain around Lucia's neck, no longer hidden but worn proudly as a reminder of inheritance that can't be stolen. Isabella's jewelry box sits open on the workshop shelf, its carved roses catching afternoon light. Some treasures are meant to be shared. Ms. Rodriguez arrives for her weekly visit, carrying a portfolio of Maria's latest artwork. The child has been drawing obsessively since the fire. Dark images at first, full of smoke and fear. Now bright pictures of gardens and pottery wheels and houses with strong foundations. Art therapy is working, Ms. Rodriguez observes, spreading the drawings across Isabella's work table. She's processing the trauma through creation instead of destruction. Like her teacher, Lucia thinks, watching Maria coax beauty from formless clay.